Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Waz, and today we're going to talk about Heroes of the Storm. Most specifically, we're going to talk about tips for beginners and some things that you can take into account as you're starting to learn to play this game and get accustomed to everything it has to offer. So, I'm going to have two main points that revolve around kind of how to interact with the community, two main points about some general tips for gameplay, and then lastly, I'm going to have one final special tip for everybody just to keep in mind while they're doing all of the above. This and all in the meantime, you get to watch me be mediocre at the game, so that should be fun. But without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get started. So, for my first tip, I would tell anybody looking to get started playing Heroes of the Storm is not to be afraid to play with other people. Heroes of the Storm is a team-based game where you're paired up with 4 other players to complete various objectives with the goal of destroying the enemy team's core. Now, to do this effectively, you'll want to work in coordination with other people, which means you're going to want to be able to talk to other people. Communication is going to be key to a victory in a game like this. So, unless you plan on playing against AI all the time, which there's nothing wrong with, you are going to be interacting with other people. So, what I would tell you to do is go ahead and go into Quick Match, and yeah, Quick Match has a reputation for having some poor games, some poorly put together games with kind of strange compositions that you're not sure how a matchmaker would put together. But the thing is, you can meet pretty decent people through Quick Match still, right? People aren't always as critical in Quick Match. And when you tend to find somebody in Quick Match that you kind of think on the same wavelength, or you just click with that person, you can go ahead and add them as a friend and keep playing a little bit later. Heroes of the Storm has a really cool incentive system for playing with friends, actually, and that is you'll gain more experience if you do play with those friends again. So when you find people, there's really no reason you shouldn't add them as a friend. It's pretty cool. The next piece that I will say is to quite simply not be a jerk. I know this is kind of a blatant statement, but it is a crux of games like Heroes of the Storm and Heroes of the Storm itself to have rather toxic communities. The reason that is to play a game like this effectively, there is a large knowledge base to know. And when people have dedicated the time to actually learn that large knowledge base to be decent at this game, or better if they happen to be, those people tend to not take kindly to people that don't put in that same level of effort to know all of that information. And it shows sometimes in gameplay. And it can be hard not to be frustrated at that. But you want to try your best not to, because there is no good way to play this game while just being a jerk to other people. You, in that case, are just frustrated because a game's not going the way or not going the way you want, excuse me. The other person's upset because, well, maybe they may not be the best player. They may not be the best player with that particular hero, or they may have just started with that hero, and now they're being belittled when they were just trying to have some fun. So, I would encourage you that instead of being one of those people that encourages that negativity, I would tell you to offer advice to whoever's on your team if they need help. The example I give is oftentimes you'll see a lot of first-time Nazeebo players use the zombie wall and trap their teammates in it. Not on purpose. I don't think any Nazeebo player is just trying to do that to their teammate, but it happens. And maybe a newer Nazeebo player might not know that if you press the W key again, that it will drop the zombies and free your teammates. So instead of telling that Nazeebo player, hey, you're a terrible player, you say, hey, next time that happens, hit W again, and we'll be cool. Now, instead of just making that Nazeebo player not want to play anymore, and just be upset and starting all kinds of garbage in chat, you've helped them just be a better player. Which is pretty cool. I always will strive to be someone that builds a better community and builds a community that I would want to be a part of. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to personally run across people that don't follow advice like this. Probably going to run into people that are going to belittle others or belittle you, say really offensive things in chat, and there's no way around it. It's going to happen. It's an online game with people. Some people have common decency, others are just jerks. And for those people, Heroes of the Storm has a really cool way to deal with that. When you hit your tab screen to show the score, next to the player's name on the same line, you have a way to not only mute a player so they can't talk or try to ping spam you or anything like that, but you also can report people for abusive chat, which is really cool. As a bonus, when you report somebody for abusive chat, it does mute them automatically, so you can kind of knock out two birds in one storm. It's definitely a good tool, and Blizzard does take into account the reports for abusive chat and harassment that happens in the game, and those people get pretty nice suspensions if they're caught doing it a lot of times. So if you're ever in a game and somebody's being really abusive, just report them. Again, it's not because you want to get somebody suspended, it's because we want to build a community that we all want to be a part of. Alright, so we're going to move on to gameplay here. And these are just some tips for, again, any new people coming into Heroes of the Storm. But my first tip is for you to diversify your play. So let me explain what that means. With a game like this, there's a lot of different heroes to choose from, and Blizzard is really good about adding new heroes very frequently. So there's always something new to do and new to learn in the game. Now, for some people that can be a little bit daunting because they feel like they've got a really steep learning curve, but I tell you that the best time to try and get on that learning curve is right now, because the longer you wait, the more heroes that you have to learn right up front. But more specifically to my point, what you should focus on is trying to be at least solid, in your opinion, at 3 to 4 heroes or so, and be comfortable doing 2 of the roles that happen in the game. Now, I'm not going to tell you to play specific heroes, I'm not going to tell you how to play those heroes, but in general, if you're working in a team, and especially as you start getting to ranked play, you want to be playing heroes that you're very reliable on. So, say you do end up playing a lot of Nazeebo, and you get really good at landing those zombie walls and trapping the enemies and really helping out your team, then that's a character that you would be comfortable and you would say you're reliable on, right? This also lets you be flexible with your team if you're comfortable with like 3 to 4 heroes or so. Just because when it comes to things like drafts, if somebody else picks your best hero, then you don't have to freak out because you don't play any other heroes. So having about 3 to 4 heroes covering at least two roles is probably a really good way to get started. If you're not really sure or you're not comfortable going out of your way to try some of these new heroes and new roles, Heroes of the Storm has a really cool dailies tool that will randomly ask you to perform dailies playing certain types of heroes or playing certain classes of heroes. So, for example, you may be a Nazeebo player, which is a Diablo hero, and you have a daily that says play 2 StarCraft heroes. Well, okay, well that means I can't play Nazeebo, let's try something else. Lets you try something new, lets you get a little better insight as to more of the information or more of the skills of other heroes, so that way when you encounter them, you're like, okay, well I see that this hero can do this at about this level, does about this much damage, and it lets you just be a better player in general. Alright, alongside of that, I would also encourage you to be familiar with other heroes and some of their abilities. Again, I'm not stressing that you should play every single hero unless you want to. By all means, it's your time, you do whatever you want. But knowing at least the basics of other heroes' abilities and how they work will go to great lengths in helping you play this game, for sure. So, for example, if you're fighting an Illidan and he flies halfway across the map and hits you, stuns you, and you're not quite sure what just happened, go play Illidan in like try mode or against AI. You can always go to try mode even if you don't own the hero. It's not the free hero of the week. So you can always test out all of their abilities without actually having access to the hero. So you can always test those things out and get an idea of what you're looking at. You can see how fast he takes down heroes in that mode and everything. So don't ever brush off that try mode. It can be quite helpful. And my final gameplay tip here is going to be go with the flow. So, go with the flow. I put it like this because you're always in a team type of scenario here with this game. And when you're in this team scenario, you're going to be with 4 other people. You could all be on the same team, all in voice communications, and all be very well coordinated, or you could all be solo queue and only have chat to go by. And this especially applies if you fall under the latter category. There's going to come a point where somebody's going to make a call, and you're not all going to agree. Half of your team is going to go in one direction, and you or maybe half the other team will go in the other. So what I would stress is, unless the objective actually calls for like splitting up your team, just to go with the rest of the team. Even if it's the wrong call, you have a better chance at succeeding at the wrong call with more people than succeeding at the right call with fewer people. It's honestly how it works. Let's say we'll use Dragonshire, just because that has an objective that requires people to usually be all over the map to do it. The thing is, if you take your whole team to one of the shrines, either the north one or the south one, you're at one point going to hold one of those objectives, right? Because if there's 2 heroes there and they see 5 coming, they're either going to run away and not contest that like they should, or they're going to get obliterated. And voila, you have half their team dead, you're good to go. The thing is, yeah, is it faster to try and cap objectives if you split the team? Yeah, absolutely. But it's always safer in numbers. So even if it's not quite the right call, or at least not the right call that you can think of, just go with the team, alright? Now, if you go with the team on that wrong call, and it turns out that it was a really wrong call, and it completely obliterates your team, don't be the smug person to just try and rub it in their face. And this kind of ties back to not being a jerk, right? It's a team game. You make calls. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, and we all learn from the calls. From that, come up, instead of belittling other people at that time, just come up with a new strategy. If you've played the game before, or you're new to the game, one thing that you'll know in most games is once the negativity starts rolling, in a chat or in anything else, all of a sudden, kind of that skill level drops on your team. People start making more mistakes because they don't care, they're not paying attention. And eventually, people are just wondering, I wonder where the surrender button is. There's no surrender button. So if you're stuck on a team that's being negative, you have to sit there that entire time while you're just getting decimated and everybody's just calling each other really derogatory terms. So instead of that, be constructive, overcome your adversity, come up with a nice strategy, stick together, and at least put up a good fight. It's the whole point of the game. Really, one game isn't going to determine any rankings. It really isn't. People have off games. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to think less of you because you lost a game, right? People lose games. Don't focus on negative. Focus on how you can play the best, how you can use your composition and all of the cool things that each of your heroes can do to build a really cool strategy. It might not be as straightforward as it is with other like pre-built teams that you can watch pros play, but hey, you know what? If that just means if you can pull it off, it's even more impressive. This brings me to my final tip for any new players to Heroes of the Storm, and that is to have fun. And I know this sounds like a cliche tip for playing a video game, but it's the whole point of why you're playing. If you find you're not having great games, just put down the game and play a different one, right? It's not that big of a deal. Heroes of the Storm is a free-to-play game, so if you put it down, no matter what, you still got an hour's worth of entertainment for $0, which is pretty cool. But you can go ahead and play any other Blizzard's games that they have. So like play Hearthstone or play Diablo or play WoW, whatever tickles your fancy, we'll say. The reason I suggest this is because over the last year or so, Blizzard has built up a pretty neat ecosystem amongst all of their games, and they all tie into Heroes of the Storm in a pretty neat way through achievements. So, for example, Diablo, you can make what's called a seasonal character. And if you get that seasonal character to maximum level, you get a portrait that you can use in Heroes of the Storm, and you get a cool mount to ride on, all for free. well, minus the cost of playing Diablo. With Hearthstone, if you win 100 games, I believe the achievement is, you get a Hearthstone card mount, which is pretty freaking cool, to be honest. And that's just for playing another free-to-play game. Don't be afraid to put it down and stop playing when you're not having fun anymore. It's not an MMO. There are no parts of this that need to feel like a grind. If you're not having fun, just stop. And then come back. Because the game's awesome. And all you need to do is just find the right people to play with, and you'll have a blast. Anyways, my name's been Waz. I hope some of these tips have been helpful to anyone looking to get into this game. I know it seems daunting, and I know it seems like there's a lot of pressure to know everything in the game, but take your time, play with other people around where you're at. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, don't be afraid to try new heroes, and go have fun. Thank you, guys. If there are any tips that you think I missed that you think a new player would really appreciate, go ahead and leave a comment below. Or if you liked the video, leave a like, and if you want to see more, just go ahead and subscribe. I really appreciate all the support. Thanks, guys.